Elon leaned back in the leather chair, the glow of multiple screens reflecting off his face in fragmented neon shards. The hum of servers behind him was almost comforting, a steady heartbeat in the sterile cavern of his private workspace. Across from him, Nikhil Kamath shifted in his seat, the creak of polished wood beneath him cutting through the low drone of machines. Their conversation, meant to be private, felt electric in the charged air, each word a spark suspended just long enough to ignite something unspoken. "You ever wonder," Nikhil started, voice low, "how far is too far when it comes to risk?" His hand brushed against the cold steel of a laptop, tracing its edge almost absent-mindedly, as if touching metal could somehow ground a wandering thought. Elon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at a small drone, hovering just beyond the glass wall, its soft whir mingling with the distant rumble of the city outside. Something about the way it moved, almost imperceptibly cautious, made him recall the first time he'd watched a Falcon 9 launch, the trembling anticipation before the fire and fury of liftoff. He remembered the smell of scorched fuel and the exhilaration, and for a moment he felt both the thrill of creation and the gnawing fear of failure. "I think," he said finally, voice calm but precise, "the question isn't how far is too far. It's whether we're willing to face the consequences of getting there." His eyes didn't leave the drone. The machinery mirrored his thoughts, mechanical yet almost alive. A subtle vibration traveled through the floor, almost imperceptible, like a warning buried in rhythm. Nikhil noticed it, the way his pulse seemed to sync with it, the way shadows danced strangely across the angled walls. "Consequences can be expensive," he muttered. His fingers drummed against his notebook, creating a soft staccato that felt like code for something he didn't want to articulate. Elon's gaze shifted to a small, black object on the table, barely more than a token, yet it radiated significance. It was an encrypted data drive, its presence both a promise and a threat. "Expensive isn't the same as irreversible," he said. There was a subtle hiss from the ventilation system, punctuating his words with a soft hiss, like the exhalation of a restrained predator. Outside, a storm began to pick up, rain pelting the glass at irregular intervals. Each drop resonated against the metal frame, a percussive counterpoint to the quiet intensity inside. Nikhil felt a chill, but it wasn't just the cold, there was a tension in the air, a suggestion that every choice made in this room might ripple far beyond the confines of the building. "I don't know if people understand what you do," Nikhil said, leaning forward, the leather chair squeaking under the movement, "or why you do it. They see rockets and electric cars, but not this." He gestured vaguely to the walls, the computers, the endless hum of infrastructure. "The thinking, the planning." Elon's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "They rarely do," he admitted. And then his eyes flicked to a small camera blinking in the corner, reminding him that even here, in the heart of his empire, observation was never far away. "But the right people understand. That's enough." There was a pause, filled only by the subtle layering of sound. The wind, scratching against the edges of the building, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, and the distant, erratic clatter of something metal falling somewhere below. It all seemed to underscore an invisible tension, a reminder that nothing in this world was truly isolated. Nikhil leaned back, the leather creaking once more. "And the rest?" he asked. "They just wait for the fall?" His acquired. Elon's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in calculation. "People always wait for something," he said. "The question is whether you're building the future, or just waiting to survive it." His hand tapped lightly on the desk, a subtle rhythm that seemed to echo in the space between them. It was almost meditative, but beneath it was a pulse, a quiet insistence that time was both ally and adversary. A soft electronic beep drew their attention. One of the screens blinked, a notification appearing briefly before vanishing, leaving only the quiet hum behind. Elon's fingers hovered over the keyboard, then withdrew, the movement deliberate. "Some things," he said, "aren't meant to be seen until the right moment." The storm outside intensified. Rain hammered against the glass, creating a chaotic symphony that was almost hypnotic. Each beat against the building seemed like a question posed to the universe itself. Nikhil shivered slightly, though it was hard to tell if it was from cold, apprehension, or awe. "You're thinking about Mars again," Nikhil said, half accusing, half admiring. Elon chuckled softly, a sound that carried more thought than humor. Mars is just a symbol, he said. The real frontier is here. He tapped his temple, then allowed his gaze to sweep the room. And here, sweeping broadly, and here. His hands gestured to the machinery, the algorithms, the networks spanning continents, almost as if trying to encompass the invisible web of influence that extended beyond any single person. A distant metallic clang made them both start, the sound carrying the signature resonance of something heavy yet controlled. In that instant, the room felt alive, almost sentient, like it was listening, processing, calculating. Nikhil's stomach tightened. There was an unspoken understanding. They weren't just in conversation, they were in a negotiation with the invisible forces surrounding them. Do you ever doubt it? Nikhil asked quietly, almost to himself. Everything you touch. Could it fail? One of that was valiant to thatsa. Elon's gaze was unwavering. Of course I doubt it, he said. But doubt is just the cost of progress. The question is whether the fear will stop you or fuel you. His words hung between them, heavy with implications, resonating in the ambient layers of the room, the hum of the servers, the faint scraping of metal, the irregular tapping of rain against the glass. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was rich, layered, almost tactile, filled with the subtle noises of life inside a space that was at once intimate and immense. Every object, every vibration, seemed to matter. Even the smallest LED flicker on a console became part of the rhythm, part of the dialogue between human ambition and technological inevitability. I guess that's why you do what you do, Nikhil murmured, his voice softer now, almost contemplative. Because fear isn't enough to stop you. Elon leaned forward slightly, hands clasped, elbows on knees. Fear is never enough to stop someone with purpose, he said. It's only enough to refine it. He paused, letting that sink in. Then, almost imperceptibly, his gaze flicked to the small camera again, reminding them both that observation and secrecy often traveled together. The real challenge, he continued, is knowing which risks are worth taking before it's too late to turn back. Outside, the storm began to subside, leaving only the soft patter of rain against the windows and the occasional distant rumble of thunder. But inside the room, the tension remained, a quiet, electric current threading between them. Words had been spoken, but meaning stretched far beyond the literal, winding through memory, ambition, and unspoken plans. Nikhil exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. Sometimes, he said, I wonder if anyone else could even see what you see. Elon's lips quirked into a half-smile. Most people don't need to, he replied. They just need to trust that someone does. He leaned back again, the hum of the room absorbing his words, the storm's aftertaste lingering, like an unspoken promise of what was to come. For a brief moment, all was still. And yet, the subtle layering of sounds, the whisper of wind, the soft tapping of rain, the quiet mechanical breaths of the machines hinted that nothing in this space was truly at rest. Every choice, every word, every calculated risk, was part of a broader rhythm, an invisible pulse that carried far beyond the walls of the room. As the night deepened, a sense of quiet inevitability settled over them. Both men understood, without saying, that this conversation was more than a dialogue, it was a calibration, a mapping of intentions and consequences. The hum of ambition, mingled with doubt and hope, threaded through the room like electricity through a circuit. And somewhere, beyond the immediate horizon of thought, the first seeds of transformation had already begun to take root. A faint metallic scraping echoed, almost swallowed by the persistent hum of the room. Elon's fingers traced idle patterns across the table, each tap a subtle punctuation against the low, rhythmic pulse of electronics surrounding them. Nikhil watched, uneasy, as shadows shifted across Elon's angular features, refracted by the soft neon glow of monitors displaying streams of numbers and graphs. The storm had passed outside, leaving the city slicked with rain, wet asphalt, reflecting distant lights like broken shards of glass. You ever notice, Elon murmured, eyes scanning a network of data feeds, how people underestimate the invisible pressure of progress? His voice was calm, almost conversational, but each syllable carried a weight, a reminder that decisions in this room could ripple across the world without anyone outside noticing. Nikhil swallowed, sensing the invisible tension, the pulse threading through the space. I guess it's easier to measure outcomes than risks, he said, tapping his notebook. His fingers made small, deliberate clicks against the leather, a subtle rhythm mirrored by the quiet whir of servers behind them. A soft beep cut through the hum, a security notification, almost trivial, yet sharp enough to make Nikhil flinch. Elon's gaze didn't shift, but the subtle tightening of his jaw suggested awareness. Everything is being measured, he said softly. Even the things you think aren't. The room's acoustic layers shifted, the soft echo of ventilation, the distant hum of city traffic, and a faint, erratic tapping somewhere in the corner forming a subtle, almost imperceptible motif of threat. Nikhil felt it in his chest, a low vibration that wasn't physical, more psychological, a reminder that in this environment, every choice carried consequences he couldn't yet see. You've built more than companies, haven't you? Nikhil asked, voice quieter now. You've built ecosystems, networks that almost feel alive. He ran a hand through his hair, tension coiling in his fingers. Elon leaned back, the leather chair creaking softly. Networks don't care about intention, he said. They only respond to input. And sometimes, input can be unpredictable. He tapped lightly on the edge of the table, the sound faint but rhythmic, echoing slightly in the almost cathedral-like acoustics of the office. A sudden flicker from one of the screens drew their eyes. Lines of code scrolled rapidly, data converging into graphs and notifications. The low vibration of the server racks beneath them added a subtle counterpoint, like a heartbeat beneath the dialogue of the machines. I sometimes wonder, Nikhil said, almost in a whisper, if you ever feel alone in all of this. His words hung in the air, fragile against the mechanical backdrop. Elon's gaze softened slightly, a rare flicker of introspection breaking his usual calculated exterior. Alone, alone, alone. Elon's gaze, he repeated, voice low. Maybe, but loneliness is a small price for clarity. He leaned forward, hands clasped together, eyes darting momentarily to the faint blinking of a distant surveillance device. The challenge is understanding which voices are worth listening to and which are background noise. The room seemed to breathe with them, the layers of subtle sound reinforcing the weight of the moment. The whir of cooling fans, a distant metallic clang, the soft echo of rain dripping somewhere beyond the walls. Nikhil's heartbeat quickened, matching the pattern of faint auditory motifs that seemed almost deliberately orchestrated. You make it sound simple, Nikhil said, trying to mask the tension creeping into his voice. But we both know it isn't. It's never simple, Elon admitted, a slight smirk breaking the tension. Complexity is the default state. The trick is finding leverage points within it, tiny levers that move massive systems. His hands gestured toward the console, as if the entire room were a living organism responsive to his touch. A faint hiss from the air vents punctuated the conversation, reminding them both that the world outside this room was as much a character in their dialogue as they were themselves. The storm's memory lingered in residual puddles against the glass, reflecting light like shards of fractured reality. You've always been looking for those levers, Nikhil said, leaning forward, voice low. Even when others couldn't see them. His fingers traced absent lines on the notebook page, almost instinctively. Elon's eyes shifted briefly, a micro-expression that passed faster than perception. Levers exist, whether you see them or not. And the ones you don't see, his voice dropped almost to a whisper, can be the most dangerous. The subtle, layered soundscape of the room shifted again. A distant metallic rattle, almost like a chain dragging across concrete, threaded beneath the steady hum, creating a tension that wrapped itself around their nerves. Nikhil's breath hitched slightly, a subconscious response to the motif, though he didn't voice it. You're talking about risk again, he said. But I think there's something else. Something people don't consider. What about the human element? You're talking about how have you Takamouse? You're talking about risk again. His gaze met Elon's, searching for a crack in the composure that rarely faltered. Elon's lips curved. Not quite a smile. Ah, humans. Unpredictable, fragile, brilliant, often the first obstacle, sometimes the last ally. Understanding people is as important as understanding systems, and sometimes harder. He paused, letting the words settle like dust in sunlight. A soft clatter drew attention, a pen rolling across the table, stopped by the edge of a notebook. It seemed trivial, but in the silence, the sound punctuated the tension between them. Elon's gaze flicked to it, his fingers hovering momentarily over the table before letting it lie. "Even the smallest details matter," he said, "often the ones you miss first." The subtle layering of ambient sound, the distant murmur of the city, the faint buzz of electronics, the gentle whisper of ventilation, formed an almost imperceptible rhythm, threading through the room, amplifying the stakes of their conversation. Nikhil's pulse synced, a quiet resonance with the environment, as if the room itself were aware of their deliberations. "You've never really stopped, have you?" Nikhil asked, voice softer, more contemplative. "Even when everything's quiet, your mind's still running ahead." Elon's expression hardened slightly, though the faint softness lingered in his eyes. "Silence doesn't exist for ideas," he said. "It's just a pause between actions. And the world keeps moving, whether you act or not." He leaned back, the leather chair sighing under the motion, as if acknowledging his statement. Nikhil exhaled, his fingers resting on the edge of the table, eyes following the subtle dance of lights across Elon's monitors. "Sometimes," he said, almost to himself, "I wonder if anyone could ever truly keep up." Elon's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Few can. That's why leadership isn't about moving fast, it's about knowing which direction is worth moving toward before anyone else does." His words were calm, but beneath the surface lay a precise edge, an imperceptible warning. A faint, irregular hum began in the corner, a minor motif threading into the soundscape. It was subtle enough to almost go unnoticed, yet it resonated deeply, like a memory brushing against the subconscious. Nikhil sensed it, shivering slightly, though he couldn't pinpoint why. "You're planning for things most people don't even imagine," Nikhil said, voice low, almost a confession. "And that's the only way to make them real," Elon replied, his hands folded, fingers tapping softly against the table, a rhythm that matched the quiet heartbeat of the room. "The rest is just noise." The city outside began to quiet further, the storm's remnants giving way to a reflective stillness. Inside, the room thrummed with subtle energy, each sound, each pause, each breath carefully calibrated, almost alive. Nikhil's eyes lingered on Elon, realizing that what they were discussing wasn't merely strategy, it was a glimpse into a mind constantly pushing against boundaries, reshaping consequences, orchestrating unseen possibilities. A distant mechanical tick punctuated the quiet, echoing off the walls, like a reminder that even in the calmest moments, tension remained. Nikhil exhaled again, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over him, heavy yet exhilarating. "You're not afraid," Nikhil said finally, almost a statement, almost a question. "Fear is a tool," Elon replied, voice precise. "It sharpens decisions, it teaches restraint. But it doesn't stop, action never has, never will." Was their Paris's. The room seemed to breathe with them, the hum of machines, the irregular taps, and subtle whispers forming an invisible rhythm of intention. And somewhere deep in the quiet, a sense of inevitability began to settle, an understanding that this dialogue was only the beginning. Every word, every pause, every micro-movement was a calibration of strategy, risk, and ambition. And as night deepened outside, both men understood. The real test was yet to come. A faint vibration ran through the floorboards, soft but insistent, like a heartbeat echoing from beneath the walls. Elon swiveled slightly in his chair, eyes scanning the monitors, absorbing streams of data that danced across the screens like tiny constellations of possibility. Outside, the city's glow reflected off rain-slick streets, fractured into jagged patterns of neon and steel. Nikhil watched him, unsettled by the way Elon seemed both present and elsewhere, as if his mind had already moved far beyond the room they occupied. "You ever feel," Nikhil began, his voice low, almost hesitant, "that the world is moving faster than anyone can track?" Elon's gaze didn't waver from the screens, but the subtle twitch of his jaw suggested acknowledgement. "The world doesn't wait," he said quietly. "It's always ahead. The trick isn't catching up, it's deciding where to intercept it." His fingers hovered briefly over a keyboard, letting the faint clicks punctuate the silence. A sudden metallic scrape echoed from the corner, almost imperceptible, but sharp enough to draw both their attention. Nikhil flinched slightly, realizing the sound carried a pattern irregular, unpredictable, a motif he couldn't quite place. Elon, however, remained unshaken, though his eyes flicked to a small sensor blinking softly in the shadows. Some patterns, Elon murmured, are easier to read if you let them speak for themselves. Nikhil leaned forward, hands resting lightly on the table. Are you saying someone's watching us? His voice was measured, trying not to betray the twinge of alarm threading through his thoughts. Elon's gaze hardened, but only for a moment. Observation is a given. The question is who interprets it and how quickly. He paused, letting the words linger like a subtle hum between them. And sometimes, he continued, softer now, you need to create noise to reveal the signal. Outside, a sudden gust rattled the window frames. The faint staccato of raindrops mingled with the whir of the servers, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm. Nikhil could feel the tension threading through the room, subtle yet palpable, a vibration beneath his skin that didn't match the physical world. You've already mapped most of the risk, Nikhil said, his tone quieter now, contemplative. But what about the unknowns? His fingers drummed lightly against his notebook, a faint counterpoint to the layered sounds. Elon's lips curved in the faintest smirk. Unknowns are opportunities, he said. The key is recognizing them before anyone else does. He tapped a finger on the edge of the table. Each tap resonated subtly, like a signal weaving through the ambient hum. A soft, irregular clicking emerged from the corner again, echoing faintly against the walls. A motif, almost like a warning, but not overt. Nikhil noticed it this time, a creeping awareness settling into the pit of his stomach. That sound, he whispered. It's out of place. Elon's eyes flicked toward it, but his voice remained calm. Distractions can be informative. The trick is distinguishing the deliberate from the accidental. He leaned back slightly, hands clasped, watching the patterns of light across the screens. Some of the loudest signals hide in silence. A low hiss began from the ventilation system, merging with a distant, metallic clang somewhere deeper in the building. It formed a subtle rhythm, threading beneath the dialogue, almost like a shadow of anticipation. Nikhil felt a shiver creep along his spine, yet the tension was not purely fear, it was alertness, a recognition that unseen forces were already moving. You make it sound controlled, Nikhil said, voice tight. But there's always chaos, isn't there? Controlled chaos is a tool, Elon replied. Uncontrolled chaos is a lesson. The difference is timing and precision, and knowing which elements matter most. He gestured vaguely at the screens, as if the streams of data themselves were the living components of a chessboard too vast to comprehend. The ambient sounds shifted subtly, the faint hum of electronics, the irregular tapping motif, and the distant cityscape forming a layered auditory tapestry. Even Nikhil's breathing seemed to sync with it, each inhale and exhale threading into the rhythm, as though the room itself were alive and aware. You've built ecosystems, Nikhil said, leaning back slightly. Systems that move silently, beyond observation, beyond interference. But what if someone finds a weak point? Elon's gaze sharpened, a micro-expression flashing before it disappeared. Every system has weak points, he said. But the question isn't whether they exist, it's whether you can anticipate them, exploit them, and adapt before anyone else does. His voice carried an edge now, subtle but undeniable. A faint vibration from the corner, the same motif Nikhil had noticed, before suddenly shifted pitch. It was almost imperceptible, a minor key change that set the nerves on edge. Nikhil's hand stilled on the notebook. It's changing, he said softly. Elon's eyes flicked again, narrowing slightly. Good, he said simply. That's exactly what we need to notice. His hands tapped lightly on the table, forming a soft rhythm that counterbalanced the irregularity from the corner. Signals like that, they tell you more than words ever could. The storm outside had fully dissipated, leaving streets slick and reflective, like fractured mirrors. The silence that followed was heavy, layered with anticipation, as if the night itself were holding its breath. Nikhil felt the weight of it, a tension threading through his chest that matched the subtle motifs threading through the room. You're always looking ahead, Nikhil said, his voice quieter now, almost reverent. Even when others aren't paying attention. Why? Elon leaned back, the chair creaking softly beneath him. Someone has to, he said. Otherwise, the future just happens to you. His fingers hovered briefly over a keyboard, then retracted, and the difference between being proactive and reactive is everything. right? A faint, irregular metallic tap echoed again, distinct this time. Nikhil realized it wasn't random, it was deliberate, a presence lurking just beyond perception. His stomach tightened, the subtle auditory motif threading into a physical tension he couldn't ignore. Elon, he said quietly, leaning forward, there's something there. Someone or something is monitoring this. Elon's eyes flicked toward the corner again, his expression unreadable. Good, he said. Now we see who's paying attention and who's just noise. He tapped lightly on the table, sending a subtle counter-rhythm into the space. Every observation, every misstep, every pause, it's all part of the calculation. The layered sounds, the faint hissing ventilation, the irregular metallic motif, the soft hum of electronics, the distant cityscape, combined into a complex, almost hypnotic rhythm. Nikhil's pulse synced, a quiet resonance with the room itself, as though the space had become an extension of their minds, mapping intention against consequence. You thrive on this, Nikhil murmured, almost to himself. The tension, the unknown, the risk. It's addictive. Elon's lips quirked in a faint smirk, the first hint of amusement in hours. It's not addiction, he said softly. It's clarity. Chaos without insight is noise. Chaos with awareness is leverage. And leverage is everything. A sudden, low hum cut across the room, almost imperceptible but vibrating through the floor. Nikhil stiffened, realizing the motif from before had intensified. Something was converging, subtle, unseen, yet undeniably present. Elon's gaze fixed on the screens again, calm, collected. And now, he said quietly, almost to himself, we see which pieces are moving, which shadows are deliberate, and which are accidental. He paused, letting the layered tension fill the space. Preparation isn't just about foresight. It's about noticing what everyone else ignores and acting before they realize it matters. The night deepened, and the city outside became a muted backdrop to the intense rhythm inside. Every sound, every pause, every flicker of light carried meaning, threaded into the fabric of strategy and anticipation. Nikhil realized, with quiet awe, that this was more than a conversation. It was an orchestration, a calibration of observation, risk, and intent. And, somewhere beyond the walls, the unseen forces were already responding. A sharp metallic ping cut through the quiet, followed by a faint, irregular vibration in the floor like the room itself had inhaled. Elon's eyes flicked toward the corner, the slight narrowing of his pupils the only indication of awareness. Nikhil tensed beside him, a subtle tightening of his shoulders, syncing with the irregular auditory motif threading through the space. Outside, the city lights reflected off wet asphalt in jagged patterns, fractured by the occasional flash of neon from passing vehicles. They're active, Elon said quietly, almost conversational, though his voice carried the weight of certainty. Not random observers. Someone's probing. His fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the table, tapping a counter-rhythm to the irregular metallic motif. We can't ignore it. 170 well, 170 well, 170 well, 170 well, 170 well, 170 well, we can't ignore it. Nikhil swallowed, aware of the rising tension, and instinctively leaned closer. Should we respond? Elon tilted his head slightly, gaze scanning the screens that displayed overlapping streams of data, some of it intentionally obfuscated, some direct. Response isn't always immediate, he said. Sometimes the best action is anticipation. Let the patterns reveal themselves before you make your move. His hands hovered above the keyboard, poised but unmoving, the hum of electronics around them layering like a deliberate symphony. A subtle hiss emerged from the ventilation, blending with a soft, rhythmic tapping somewhere in the corner, creating a motif that felt almost alive, like the room itself was breathing, listening. Nikhil's pulse quickened, his senses alert to every nuance. You always seem to see it first, he murmured, almost admiring, almost fearful, even when the evidence is barely there. Elon's lips quirked in a faint smirk. Not seeing it first, he said. Recognizing what matters first. Observation without interpretation is useless noise. Interpretation without action is wasted potential. And action without awareness is catastrophe. Outside, a sudden gust rattled the glass. Rain lightly tapping in a sporadic rhythm, adding another layer to the ambient soundscape. The combination of mechanical hums, metallic motifs, and distant urban noise created a subtle tension that seemed to thread through the very walls. Nikhil felt it in his chest, a low vibration that resonated beneath his skin. Elon leaned back, eyes shifting to a small black sensor blinking softly in the shadowed corner. "They're learning," he said quietly, "probing for patterns, testing for weaknesses. But what they don't realize is that we anticipate the probing." His hands folded on the desk, fingers tapping a deliberate, almost meditative rhythm. Nikhil exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself. "And if they escalate? If they act before we're ready?" A faint metallic clang echoed from somewhere deeper in the room. Irregular, deliberate. It was subtle enough to almost be mistaken for ambient noise, but the motif threaded through it made it impossible to ignore. Elon's gaze followed the sound for a fraction of a second. "Then we adapt," he said, "always. But only after understanding the move, not reacting blindly." The layered sounds, the soft whir of servers, irregular metallic motifs, distant city hums combined into a complex rhythm, threading tension through their conversation. Each beat, each whisper, each subtle vibration became a signal in itself. Nikhil realized the room was no longer just a space, it was an instrument of observation and anticipation. "You thrive on this," Nikhil said softly. "The uncertainty, the risk, the unseen threats." His fingers tapped lightly on his notebook, creating a quiet counterpoint to the room's hum. Elon's eyes glimmered faintly under the neon reflections. "Clarity emerges in uncertainty," he said. "The unknown isn't a threat, it's an opportunity for leverage. And leverage is everything." Another metallic tap, irregular and sharper this time, resonated from the corner. Nikhil stiffened, recognizing the pattern was deliberate now. Someone or something was signaling presence, probing boundaries. Elon, however, remained calm, his fingers brushing the keyboard, as if conducting the room's layered rhythm. "They're testing," Elon continued. "Every micro-movement, every hesitation, it tells them more than they know. But we see it, and will respond in kind." His eyes scanned the data streams again, subtle lines of code revealing anomalies that only someone like him could recognize. Outside, a distant siren cut through the night, the note high and fleeting, barely noticed by the untrained ear, but to Nikhil, its intrusion added a layer of tension that threaded through his pulse. He realized they weren't just dealing with abstract patterns, they were engaging with real, unpredictable forces. "And if they escalate further?" Nikhil asked, voice low. Elon's expression remained unreadable, though his gaze flicked to the blinking sensor again. "Then we escalate smarter," he said, "every move calculated, every risk weighed, but always one step ahead." His fingers drummed lightly on the table, setting a rhythm beneath the irregular metallic motif that seemed to pulse through the floor. A faint hiss, almost like a whisper, emerged from the ventilation system. It merged with a distant tapping, somewhere beyond the immediate space, creating a subtle counterpoint to Elon's rhythm. The room itself seemed aware, attuned to the tension, vibrating with purpose. Nikhil exhaled slowly, letting the ambient tension settle, even as it continued to thread through his nerves. "You've already mapped this," he said quietly. "Every contingency, every anomaly, every threat." Elon's eyes flicked toward him, sharp, precise. "Mapping isn't enough," he said. "Understanding is. Anticipation, not reaction. And patience. Patience is the most underrated weapon of all." The layered sounds, the faint hum of electronics, irregular metallic taps, soft ventilation hiss, distant urban echoes, wove a tapestry of anticipation. Nikhil could feel it in his chest, a low vibration threading through the air, syncing with the subtle shifts of tension between them. "Then we wait," Nikhil said softly, "and observe." Elon's lips curved slightly, a faint smile shadowed by calculation. "We do more than wait," he said. "We set the stage, and the stage will reveal who is ready to move and who is already behind." "I come, you can section so." A distant metallic clang echoed one last time, irregular, deliberate, almost like punctuation in a sentence neither of them could fully read yet. Nikhil's pulse raced, the subtle auditory motif threading through him, as if the room itself were alive, speaking in a language of tension and anticipation. Outside, The city lay quiet under the fractured neon reflections, the storm's remnants casting mirrored light across streets. Inside, the room vibrated with intent, a careful orchestration of observation, anticipation, and unseen leverage. And somewhere just beyond perception, the unseen forces were already responding, testing, probing, moving through the invisible web Elon had long mastered. The night deepened, and the subtle, layered rhythm of the room, metallic taps, low hums, soft hisses, distant urban echoes held them in its tense embrace. Both men knew, without words, that this was no longer merely a conversation or planning session. This was a battlefield of observation, strategy, and unseen forces. And the first real moves were about to begin. A low, mechanical vibration hummed beneath the floor, subtle at first, then growing into a deliberate rhythm, like the pulse of something watching. Elon didn't flinch. His fingers hovered over the console, eyes scanning streams of incoming data with surgical precision. Nikhil's breath caught at the irregular metallic taps echoing from the corner, sharp, deliberate, and unmistakably human, yet distant enough to feel like a ghost moving through the walls. Rain-slick streets beyond the glass mirrored fractured neon, but the city's reflection felt muted, almost distant, as if the room existed in its own tense dimension. "They're moving," Nikhil whispered, his voice low, unsure. "Closer." Elon's gaze flicked toward a blinking sensor embedded in the shadows. His voice remained calm, controlled, but carried an edge that cut through the hum. "Not closer," he said. "They're revealing themselves. And we know how to read the signs." Phrase, with maybe, Wazras. A soft hiss of ventilation merged with the distant buzz of electronics, forming a multi-layered soundscape that threaded tension through the room. Nikhil's pulse synced unconsciously with the rhythm, the faint, irregular tapping, the hum, the hiss, each sound a signal he was only beginning to interpret. A sudden metallic scrape, closer this time, reverberated from the far corner. Nikhil flinched, but Elon's hand moved smoothly, adjusting a sensor on the desk. "They think stealth equals advantage," Elon said, almost conversationally. "They're wrong. Noise is a language, if you know how to listen." "And aggresses." From the corner, a subtle click echoed, irregular yet deliberate, like Morse code with no clear message, yet the pattern resonated in Nikhil's chest. "They're testing limits," he said, "trying to see if we react." "Exactly," Elon replied. "And the reaction is everything." He typed rapidly, the soft clicks of keys, forming a counter-rhythm to the external motif. "We turn observation into leverage. Every movement, every sound, it counts." The room seemed to tighten, the air charged. A faint metallic tap echoed again, but layered now with the soft vibration of servers beneath their feet, creating a complex auditory tension. Nikhil realized with unease that the subtle sounds weren't just background, they were deliberate signals, shaping perception, dictating responses. "They've got tools," Nikhil said, voice taut. "Mechanical. Remote. Advanced." He pointed subtly to the corner. "Sensors. Probes. I can feel them watching, measuring." Elon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Good," he said. "That means they're predictable. The more deliberate their intrusion, the more obvious their rhythm. And rhythm," he tapped his finger on the desk, "can be countered." A faint hiss rose from the ventilation again, irregular but patterned. Nikhil felt it in his chest, a vibration that threaded through him like an alarm. He realized the antagonist's presence wasn't just physical, it was psychological, threading through perception, tension, and timing. "They're bold," Nikhil said. "They're testing us, probing weakness." Elon's hands moved with quiet precision, adjusting settings, overlaying defensive algorithms. "Boldness is predictable," he said. "Predictability is exploitable. Every probe is a clue." He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "And the first clue often tells you everything you need to know." The metallic taps from the corner intensified, now rhythmic, almost like footsteps pacing behind walls. Nikhil's stomach tightened with each echo. "They're entering," he whispered. Elon didn't flinch. "Let them," he said softly. "We're ready." His eyes scanned the screens, tracking movement invisible to anyone else. The ambient hum of electronics, irregular metallic taps, and distant city noises wove a tapestry of layered tension. Each microbeat of sound threaded the room with anticipation, signaling an imminent clash. A faint metallic scraping grew louder, punctuated by subtle hissing, and suddenly, a sharp click reverberated like a lock disengaging somewhere nearby. Nikhil stiffened. "They've bypassed the first layer," he said. "This is real." Elon's gaze hardened, yet his movements remained fluid, precise. "Real was expected," he said. "What we do next defines advantage." His hands danced across the console, initiating countermeasures, soft clicks, forming a rhythm that merged with the ambient sounds, creating a layered, almost hypnotic cadence. From the corner, a shadow shifted, subtle but deliberate. Nikhil felt it before he saw it, the presence threading into the vibration beneath the floor. A faint metallic tap followed, then another, like punctuation marks in an invisible sentence. "They're learning from every action," Nikhil said, "each time we respond." His voice faltered, the weight of the moment pressing down. "And each time," Elon said, cutting him off, "we shape the environment. Every noise, every subtle movement, every decision becomes leverage. Observation is only the first step. Reaction is the weapon." He paused, letting the layered tension of the room fill the silence, and understanding the rhythm, he tapped lightly on the table. His victory. He paused. A victory. The antagonist's presence became more pronounced. Metallic taps echoed in syncopation with the ambient hum, each sound threaded deliberately to unsettle, to provoke, to test. Nikhil's chest tightened, the vibration threading through his bones. Yet he felt a strange exhilaration, like being part of a carefully orchestrated game he couldn't yet fully see. "They're skilled," Nikhil said. "More than I expected." "I was not, no." Elon's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly. "Skill doesn't matter without anticipation," he said. "We've prepared for this. And every move they make, we've already accounted for, in some way." A sudden hiss rose from the ventilation, merging with the rhythmic, metallic tapping. Nikhil realized the motif had changed subtly, a pattern he had missed before. It was deliberate, signaling escalation, yet it also exposed the antagonist's timing. "They're going to escalate again," Nikhil whispered. Awareness sharpening. "Then we escalate smarter," Elon said, eyes fixed on the screens, hands moving with controlled precision. "Every sound, every pause, every micro-movement is part of the strategy, and we're already 3 steps ahead." The room pulsed with tension. Low hums, irregular metallic taps, soft hissing, and distant city echoes blending into a complex, layered rhythm. Nikhil's pulse synced with it, each microbeat threading perception, anticipation, and psychological acuity. Elon finally leaned back, a faint, almost imperceptible smile brushing his lips. "Let them act," he said softly. "The first real moves always reveal everything." Outside, the storm's remnants glistened on streets and glass. Inside, the room breathed, vibrating with intent. Every layer of sound, every microbeat, every subtle movement orchestrated for maximum leverage. And somewhere beyond perception, the unseen antagonist forces were making their first tangible move, just as Elon had predicted. A faint metallic hum vibrated beneath the floor, merging with the soft hiss of ventilation. The irregular tapping from the corner had grown bolder, deliberate, threaded with intention, a rhythm that whispered of presence, proximity, and patience. Elon's fingers hovered above the console, eyes scanning streams of shifting data like constellations in motion. Nikhil's breath caught, chest tightening, as the layered sounds of the room taps, hums, distant echoes of the city formed an almost sentient tension, threading through muscle and nerve. "They're coordinating," Nikhil said, voice low. "This isn't random. Someone is orchestrating every move." Elon's gaze didn't waver from the screens, but the faint narrowing of his eyes suggested calculation, awareness. "Coordination is predictable," he said softly. "Predictable patterns reveal weaknesses. And they've shown us theirs." He tapped lightly on the table, sending a counter rhythm into the ambient soundscape. Subtle, yet deliberate. Outside, neon fractured across wet streets, reflecting jagged and erratic light. Inside, The room's sounds, ventilation, hiss, metallic taps, electronic hum, layered like a symphony of tension. Nikhil felt it vibrating through him, syncing with his pulse. A shadow moved in the corner, barely perceptible, yet each shift triggered the metallic tapping motif, sharp and irregular. Nikhil flinched, a surge of awareness threading through his mind. "They're here," he whispered. "Good," Elon said calmly. "Presence is information. Every motion, every sound. It tells us more than they know." His hands danced over the keyboard, executing commands that rippled through unseen digital layers, a silent counterstrike to the auditory tension around them. A sudden hiss rose from the vents, louder this time, merging with the irregular metallic taps. The sound was layered, hypnotic, threading psychological pressure directly into their awareness. Nikhil realized the antagonist wasn't just intruding physically, they were attacking perception, rhythm, and anticipation. "They're trying to unsettle us," Nikhil said, voice tight, tone threading tension into the air. "Exactly," Elon replied. "Noise is leverage if you can read it. Fear is leverage if you can control it." He leaned forward slightly, eyes flicking to a blinking sensor in the shadowed corner. "And control." His fingers tapped the desk, in a subtle rhythm. "Is everything." A sudden metallic scrape, closer, echoed from the corner. Nikhil stiffened. It was deliberate, a signal, threaded with timing that hinted at experience, calculation, and intent. "They're probing for our weaknesses," Nikhil murmured. "Testing patience. Testing reactions." Elon's lips quirked faintly. "Patience is an active weapon," he said softly. "Observation is only the beginning. Timing is what turns insight into leverage." His hands moved fluidly across the keyboard, the soft clicks forming a rhythm that counterbalanced the antagonist's motifs. From the corner, a shadow shifted again, the metallic taps now forming a syncopated pattern. Nikhil's stomach tightened, the subtle vibration threading through muscle and nerve. "They're escalating," he whispered. Elon's gaze flicked toward him. Sharp, precise. "Let them," he said. "Here, Elon's for mode." "Let them," he said. "Escalation reveals intent, timing, and limitations. Every signal, every micro-movement, it becomes data, and we use data to dominate outcomes." The room pulsed with layered tension, ventilation hiss, irregular metallic taps, distant city hum, soft electronic vibrations. Each microbeat threaded into Nikhil's perception, forming a rhythm that was both uncomfortable and strangely exhilarating. "They're coordinating attacks across multiple layers," Nikhil said, realization sharpening his tone. "Physical, digital, psychological. And we anticipate each layer," Elon said, fingers drumming lightly on the table, forming a subtle, counter-rhythm. "We don't just react, we preempt." "And preemption," his lips curved faintly. His victory before engagement. A faint metallic click, sharp, echoed from the corner, immediately followed by a soft hiss. The room's soundscape had become an orchestra of tension, with each note deliberately threading anticipation and awareness into the space. "They're skilled," Nikhil said, tone taut with recognition. "Much more than we imagined." "Skill is irrelevant without awareness," Elon replied. "We've accounted for skill. What matters is observation, anticipation, and timing. The next move will show us everything." A sudden surge of movement, a shadow crossing the wall, metallic taps quickening pulled Nikhil upright. He realized, with a pulse of adrenaline, that the first direct confrontation was imminent. Elon remained poised, eyes scanning, hands ready. "Now," he said softly, "we respond with leverage, not panic. Every sound, every pause, every micro-movement becomes our weapon." The shadow advanced slightly, metallic taps punctuating its rhythm. Nikhil's pulse raced, synced to the layered tension around him. Each hiss, hum, and tap became part of a calculated battle, threading anticipation, psychological pressure, and strategic insight into a single living rhythm. "They're testing limits," Nikhil whispered, almost to himself, "seeing how far they can push before we react." "And now," Elon said, voice low, "we show the consequence of underestimating awareness. Every movement, every decision, threads the narrative of control. And control. He tapped lightly on the table. Rhythm precise, deliberate. Defines victory. A sudden low vibration surged through the floorboards, harmonizing with the metallic taps, electronic hum, and ventilation hiss. Nikhil realized the room itself had become a weapon. Every layer of sound, every microbeat, every subtle shift, threading anticipation and leverage into the confrontation. Outside, neon lights reflected off rain-soaked streets, fractured and jagged. Inside, the room breathed with intent, alive with tension, awareness, and orchestration. And somewhere just beyond perception, the unseen forces, antagonists, intruders, orchestrators were about to confront the consequences of misreading rhythm, patience, and anticipation. Elon's eyes glimmered faintly under the fractured neon glow. "Let them act," he said. "The first true moves always reveal more than words ever could, and once they reveal themselves, we decide the outcome." The room thrummed with layered sound, metallic taps, low vibrations, soft electronic hums, distant city echoes, ventilation hisses, each microbeat threading anticipation, observation, and strategic dominance. Nikhil felt it deep in his chest, a rhythm that was both nerve-wracking and exhilarating. The first real engagement had begun. A sudden, sharp metallic ping echoed from the corner, followed by a low, vibrating hum that seemed to thread through the floor. Nikhil's chest tightened. Every fiber of his body recognized the rhythm as deliberate, purposeful, alive. "They're probing deeper," Nikhil said, voice taut, barely above a whisper. "Not just testing, they're trying to destabilize us." Elon's gaze never left the monitors, though his eyes glimmered faintly under the fractured neon glow. "Destabilization is predictable," he said softly. "Every overreach, every misstep, it tells us more than they intend. Observation becomes leverage. Where they really have tending." A faint hiss rose from the ventilation, merging with the irregular metallic taps. Nikhil realized the motif had shifted subtly, a new pattern threading the same familiar sounds into an unexpected rhythm. Someone, or something, was adapting. "They're changing their approach," Nikhil said. "See the variation in the taps?" "Exactly," Elon replied. "And variation is weakness masked as strength. The rhythm betrays intent if you know how to read it." His fingers danced lightly across the keyboard, tapping out a counter rhythm, soft yet deliberate. The layered hum of electronics, ventilation, and faint metallic echoes formed a complex auditory map, threading tension directly into perception. A shadow moved along the wall, subtle yet deliberate. Nikhil's pulse spiked. He realized he could almost feel the presence through the vibration beneath the floorboards. "They're closer," he whispered. Elon's lips curved faintly. "Proximity isn't the threat. It's information. Every micro-movement, every sound, every hesitation reveals a strategy. And strategy," he tapped lightly on the desk, "rhythm precise, is only as good as the awareness guiding it." From the corner, a metallic scraping sounded again, sharp and irregular. The pattern pulsed, layering with ventilation hiss and soft electronic vibrations, threading psychological tension through the air. Nikhil's body stiffened. It wasn't just sound, it was communication, deliberate, coded, and almost human in its cadence. "They're skilled," Nikhil admitted, voice low. "Too skilled for random interference." Elon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Skill doesn't matter without anticipation. We've accounted for skill. What matters is timing, control, and rhythm." And now, he paused, letting the layered tension build. "We observed the first true signs of intent." The shadow shifted again, metallic taps quickening, vibrating through walls, floor, and nerve. Nikhil felt it threading into his chest, syncing with the subtle hissing and hum, forming a living rhythm. "They're testing boundaries," he said, "seeing how far they can push before we respond." "And that test," Elon said, voice low, precise, "is what gives us leverage." His hands moved fluidly across the console, setting digital countermeasures, overlaying the auditory rhythm with subtle electronic beats that threaded tension, perception, and anticipation into the room's sonic landscape. A faint click, sharp and deliberate, reverberated from the far corner. The irregular metallic taps accelerated, a syncopated pulse threading a new layer of uncertainty. Nikhil's pulse raced. "They're escalating," he whispered. "Good," Elon said softly. "Escalation reveals weakness, exposes rhythm, and signals intent. And once intent is revealed—" He paused, letting the tension swell. "We act." The layered sounds, ventilation hiss, metallic taps, electronic hums. Distant city echoes formed a complex rhythm that pulsed through the room, threading perception and anticipation into every nerve. Nikhil realized the engagement had become fully psychological as well as tactical. "They've coordinated across multiple layers," Nikhil said. "Physical, digital, emotional. And we've accounted for each layer," Elon replied, fingers tapping lightly on the desk, forming a subtle, precise counterbeat. "The first move is theirs, the second is ours. And the second defines the outcome." His ways. A shadow flitted closer, metallic taps punctuating each step, layered with the ventilation hiss and hum. UYS, UYS and SA. Nikhil's awareness sharpened to every nuance, the slight delay in a tap, the irregularity of a vibration, the soft hiss of displaced air. "They're calculating," he said, voice tight. Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon light. "Calculation is predictable," he said. "Every rhythm, every hesitation, every misstep. It gives us control. And control," he tapped lightly again, "is power." Problem, control. The antagonist's presence became undeniable. Shadows, irregular metallic taps, ventilation hisses, and subtle hums threading a living rhythm of tension. Nikhil felt the room's pulse syncing with his own, a strange exhilaration threading through fear and anticipation. "They're testing us psychologically," Nikhil said, "trying to provoke a mistake." "Exactly," Elon replied. "Mistakes reveal intention. And intention," he tapped lightly, eyes never leaving the screens, "is leverage. Observation becomes action. Awareness becomes victory." Another low vibration pulsed through the floor, harmonizing with the layered metallic taps and hums. The room itself seemed alive, threading anticipation, perception, and control into every microbeat. Nikhil realized the antagonist wasn't just in the room, they were in the rhythm of everything, challenging not just movement but perception itself. Outside, the city lights fractured across rain-slick streets, jagged and erratic. Inside, the room breathed, alive with tension, sound, and observation. Elon's presence was calm, almost serene, yet every subtle movement, every tap, every flicker of his eyes was deliberate, orchestrating control through rhythm, perception, and awareness. "They've revealed themselves," Nikhil said softly, understanding. "The first move, it tells us everything we need to know." Elon's faint smile touched his lips. "Exactly," he said. "And now, we decide the outcome." "Quite, chose." The room thrummed with layered sound. Metallic taps, low vibrations, electronic hums. Ventilation hisses, every microbeat, threading anticipation, perception, and strategic dominance. Nikhil felt it deep in his chest, a rhythm that was both nerve-wracking and exhilarating. The confrontation had fully begun, and the unseen forces, skilled, deliberate, and calculating, were now in play. A sudden, sharp, metallic clang resonated from the far corner, vibrating through the floor, echoing against walls, threading tension directly into muscle and nerve. Nikhil's chest tightened. Instinctively, he leaned forward. Senses stretched to every vibration, every shift of shadow, every faint hiss from the ventilation. "They've made their move," he whispered, voice taut. The first overt action. Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon reflections, fingers poised over the console. "Expected," he said softly. "Observation isn't passive, it's preemptive. Every motion, every sound, we've anticipated." From the shadows, a subtle shift of figure, indistinct but deliberate, moved with measured precision. Metallic taps punctuated each step, layered with the faint hum of servers and irregular ventilation hiss. The rhythm was deliberate, almost human, but unnervingly controlled, threading psychological tension directly into the room's atmosphere. "They're coordinated," Nikhil murmured, noticing the subtle micropatterns in movement and sound. "Multiple operatives, working in sync." "And predictable," Elon replied. Skill without awareness is a liability. They've revealed rhythm, hesitation, and intent. That's leverage. His fingers danced across the keyboard, initiating soft countermeasures that pulsed through the room in quiet, layered rhythms. The shadow flitted closer, metallic taps accelerating in syncopation with faint electronic beeps and a low, vibrating floor hum. Nikhil's pulse raced. Every instinct screamed that they were threading chaos, testing reactions, probing boundaries. They're trying to destabilize us, he said. They want a reaction, a misstep. Exactly, Elon said, voice low and precise. And every reaction is data. Every hesitation is opportunity. Control isn't force, it's rhythm. Observation becomes strategy. Awareness becomes dominance. A sudden hiss erupted from the ventilation, merging with the metallic taps now faster, sharper. Nikhil felt it vibrating through his chest, threading anticipation into muscle and nerve. The room itself seemed alive, responding, pulsing in rhythm with both threat and counter-threat. They're escalating faster than before, Nikhil said, teeth clenched. They're not holding back. They're not holding back. Elon's lips quirked faintly. Escalation reveals weaknesses, he said softly. Every move, every pattern, it tells us more than they intend. And once intent is revealed. He tapped lightly on the desk, counter rhythm precise. We act. The shadow shifted, a scraping metallic footstep, followed by a sudden click, layered with low-frequency vibrations that pulsed through the floorboards. Nikhil flinched, but felt a strange exhilaration threading through fear. Every sound was a signal, every vibration a clue. They're attacking on multiple layers, Nikhil said. Physical, electronic, psychological. I have RGs, and we've accounted for all layers, Elon said, fingers moving in measured taps across the console. The first move is theirs, the second defines the outcome, and the second is ours. The shadow advanced, now more defined. Metallic taps punctuated every motion. Ventilation hiss fluctuated. Electronics hummed irregularly. And Nikhil realized with a jolt. They were engaged in a fully orchestrated battle of perception, rhythm, and anticipation. They've revealed the lead operative, Nikhil whispered. You can see it in the pattern, in the taps. Elon's gaze sharpened, and that revelation is leverage. We respond, not with panic, but with precision. Every movement, every beat, every subtle rhythm threads strategy into reality. From the far corner, the shadow lunged a calculated, swift movement, metallic taps cutting through the layered hum like punctuation. Nikhil's muscles tensed, and instinctively, he mirrored Elon's calm precision, following rhythm and counter-rhythm rather than reaction alone. Elon's fingers struck keys in a quiet cascade, digital countermeasures, pulsing in tandem with the room's audio tapestry. Ventilation hiss rose, metallic taps echoed, low hums vibrated, threading the environment itself into a living instrument of anticipation and control. They've underestimated timing, Elon said softly. Precision is our weapon. Awareness is our advantage. And now, he paused, letting the layered tension swell. We turn observation into action. The shadow faltered, metallic taps misaligned with the room's established rhythm. Nikhil felt the shift, instinctively sensing leverage. A low vibration pulsed through the floorboards, synced with the faint electronic hums and ventilation hiss. And for the first time, he realized the room itself was a weapon, a living network of sound, perception, and anticipation. They're off balance, Nikhil whispered, heart racing. You can see it, timing's wrong. Elon's lips curved faintly. Exactly. Chaos, disguised as control, reveals weakness, and weakness is dominance waiting to be applied. He tapped the desk lightly, sending a counter-rhythm threading anticipation through the shadow's movements. A final metallic clang echoed sharply, irregular but deliberate. The shadow froze, instinctively adjusting, but the rhythm of the room ventilation hiss, electronic hum, low-frequency vibration, counter-tapping dominated. Nikhil realized they had seized the tactical advantage without a single overt confrontation. The room, observation, and anticipation had become a living weapon. Outside, the storm had faded, but neon fractured across wet streets, casting jagged reflections. Inside, the room pulsed, alive with rhythm, tension, and control. The unseen forces, skilled, deliberate, calculating, were now responding not to force, but to perception, awareness, and anticipation. Elon leaned back slightly, eyes glimmering, hands relaxed but poised. "The first clash is over," he said softly. "And in this rhythm, we define victory before engagement ends." Nikhil exhaled, feeling the pulse of the room threading through him, a mixture of adrenaline, awareness, and subtle triumph. The engagement had tested every nerve, every instinct, every perception, and yet, through observation, anticipation, and control, they had turned the first move into a decisive advantage. The antagonist forces were still present, still calculating, still dangerous, but now, for the first time, Elon and Nikhil held the rhythm. And in this game of sound, perception, and timing, holding the rhythm was everything. A faint, mechanical vibration thrummed beneath the floor, slower now, measured, like the heartbeat of something calculating in the shadows. Nikhil felt it first in his chest, a subtle, rhythmic pulse that threaded through the room with deliberate intent. "They're regrouping," he whispered, voice low, tense. "You can feel it. They're recalibrating after the last move." Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon, scanning the monitors with precise focus. "Expected," he said softly. "After a failed maneuver, most operators retreat, recalculate, try a new pattern. Observation becomes insight, and insight is leverage." The metallic taps had shifted. Irregular at first, they now formed a new rhythm, subtle, almost musical, but calculated. Each tap threaded a warning, a coded signal to someone unseen, yet the meaning was clear. The antagonists were communicating, coordinating, planning the next strike. "They've got someone leading," Nikhil said, noticing the faint irregularities in movement and sound, the patterns different, more disciplined, more intentional. "And leadership exposes weakness," Elon replied. "Every calculated move leaves a micro-trace, a signal in rhythm, if you know how to read it." He tapped lightly on the console, sending a counter-rhythm weaving into the room's layered soundscape. Ventilation hiss, electronic hum, low-frequency vibration. You turn their strength into leverage. A faint hiss rose from the vents, merging with the metallic taps, pulsing through the floorboards. Nikhil's pulse synced with it, a strange combination of dread and exhilaration threading through him. "They're not just attacking physically," he said. "They're probing psychologically." Elon's fingers danced across the keyboard, soft clicks echoing like punctuation in the room's tense symphony. "Psychology is rhythm," he said. "Every hesitation, every pause, every misstep, they expose themselves. Observation is only the first layer. Anticipation is the weapon. One-side, Rimmer, Weyen, Remmer, Weyen, Weyen." A shadow moved along the far wall, subtle, deliberate. Metallic taps punctuated each step, ventilation hiss fluctuated, electronics hummed irregularly. Nikhil stiffened. "They're testing boundaries, seeing how far they can push before we respond. And that test," Elon said softly, eyes narrowing, "reveals intent." His fingers moved rapidly across the console, overlaying the ambient rhythm with subtle electronic pulses, threading counter-signals into the soundscape. "Once intent is visible, we act." Precisely. In the Mastic Dao, from the shadows, a figure shifted, now more distinct. Metallic taps quickened, forming syncopated beats, layered with the ventilation, hiss, and hum. Nikhil's awareness sharpened to every nuance, the delay in a tap, the irregularity of a vibration, the faint whistle of displaced air. "They're coordinating," he whispered, realization cutting through tension. Elon's lips curved faintly. "Coordination without unpredictability is weakness." They've revealed the leader through rhythm, through timing, through repetition. He tapped lightly on the desk, sending a subtle counter-rhythm, threading anticipation through the shadows' movements. The antagonist's presence became undeniable. Shadows, irregular metallic taps, ventilation hisses, soft hums. each microbeat threading tension into perception, shaping Nikhil's and Elon's awareness. They've underestimated timing, Nikhil said, pulse racing. Their patterns aren't perfect. Exactly, Elon replied. Chaos, disguised as control, always exposes micro-errors. Every misstep, every hesitation, becomes leverage. Awareness becomes action, and action defines outcome. A low, vibrating pulse surged through the floorboards, harmonizing with metallic taps, electronic hum, and ventilation hiss. The room itself felt alive, threading anticipation, perception, and control into every beat. Nikhil realized that the antagonists weren't merely present, they were trying to dominate rhythm, perception, and tension. They're revealing motives now, Nikhil said. You can sense it in the pattern of their approach. Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon light. Intent is always revealed in rhythm, even when hidden. Observation shows what they want. Anticipation shows how to stop it. And now, he paused, letting the room thrum with layered tension. We leverage it. From the far corner, metallic taps accelerated. Ventilation hiss rose and fell in deliberate cadence, low-frequency hum vibrating subtly through the floor. Nikhil felt the thread of strategy, of psychological warfare, weaving around him. They're planning a major escalation, he said. We'll see it in the next move. And when that move comes, Elon said softly, we'll already have the advantage. Observation, rhythm, anticipation. That's our battlefield. Outside, fractured neon reflected on rain-soaked streets, jagged and distorted. Inside, the room pulsed with tension, alive with layered sound, anticipation, and control. The antagonist forces, skilled, deliberate, calculating, were regrouping, but the rhythm of perception, awareness, and strategy was firmly in Elon's and Nikhil's hands. They're coming, Nikhil whispered. And we're ready, Elon replied. The next engagement will show who controls the rhythm, and in this game, rhythm is everything. A low, rolling vibration thrummed beneath the floor, threading through muscle and nerve, mingling with a distant, metallic echo that ricocheted off walls. Nikhil's chest tightened instinctively. The room was alive, each sound a prelude, each pulse a warning. They're moving, he whispered, barely audible. All at once, coordinated. Elon's eyes gleamed under fractured neon, calm yet razor-sharp. Expected, he said softly. A coordinated strike always leaves microsignals. Observation is the first advantage. Anticipation turns signals into leverage. End quote. The metallic taps returned, faster now, sharper, layered with ventilation hiss, soft electronic hums, and faint low-frequency vibrations threading beneath the floorboards. Nikhil noticed subtle irregularities. The leader's pattern betrayed intent. A tiny delay here, a subtle shift there. They've revealed the leader's rhythm, Nikhil said, eyes narrowing. You can see it in the timing. And that reveals their plan, Elon replied. His fingers moved swiftly across the console, soft clicks punctuating the room's layered soundscape. Coordination without unpredictability is weakness. Every micro-error is leverage. I have no... Suddenly, a shadow flitted across the far wall, metallic taps punctuating each step. Ventilation hiss swelling, faint hums threading tension into perception. Nikhil's pulse synced with the room's rhythm, muscles taut, senses sharpened to every nuance. They're testing reaction, Nikhil murmured. Pushing boundaries, probing for hesitation. There's a Saros, what I see. Where? There are men. What I see. Where men? What I see. You are men, Shah. What I see. What I see. Exactly, Elon said softly. Reaction reveals intent. And once intent is visible... He tapped lightly on the desk, sending a counter-rhythm threading anticipation into the shadow's movements. We act with precision. From the corner, a sharp metallic clang rang out, rebounding against walls, vibrating through the floor. The antagonist's rhythm was deliberate, calculated, designed to unsettle. Nikhil felt the pressure in his chest, tension threading directly into nerve and muscle. They're attacking on multiple fronts, he said, voice taut. Physical, digital, psychological, all at once. And we've accounted for every front, Elon replied, lips quirked faintly. The first strike is theirs, the counter-strike is ours. Timing is control, awareness is power. A sudden hiss erupted from the ventilation, merging with metallic taps, electronic hums, and low vibrations, creating a multi-layered rhythm. Nikhil's awareness expanded every sound, every micro-movement. Every pause threaded strategic information. They're escalating, Nikhil said, feeling the surge of adrenaline. Faster, more aggressive than before. Escalation always reveals weaknesses, Elon said. Every micro-error, hesitation, or misstep becomes leverage. Awareness allows us to turn chaos into control. He tapped the desk lightly, overlaying the room's soundscape with precise counter-rhythms. The shadow lunged, metallic taps slicing through layered sound, a deliberate, controlled movement. Nikhil mirrored Elon's calm precision, following rhythm and counter-rhythm, letting perception guide action rather than reaction. Elon's hands moved fluidly across the console, initiating digital pulses that harmonized with ventilation hiss, low-frequency vibrations, and metallic echoes. The room itself became a weapon, alive with anticipation, tension, and control. They've miscalculated timing, Nikhil whispered. They're off balance. Exactly, Elon said, eyes glinting. Chaos, disguised as control, always exposes micro-errors. And once those errors are visible, leverage becomes victory. He tapped lightly, threading counter-rhythm through the room, forcing the shadow to hesitate, disrupt the antagonist's rhythm. A final, sharp metallic clang rang out, echoing through the room, followed by a brief, pregnant silence. The ventilation hiss fell, hums softened, low vibrations slowed the room's rhythm dominant, precise, controlled. Nikhil exhaled, feeling the pulse of the room threading through him, a mixture of adrenaline, awareness, and subtle triumph. They had seized the advantage without a single overt confrontation. Observation, anticipation, and rhythm had become a living weapon. Outside, fractured neon reflected across rain-soaked streets. Inside, the room pulsed with layered tension, alive with sound, strategy, and control. The antagonists were still present, calculating, and dangerous, but now, the rhythm was in Elon's and Nikhil's hands. They'll regroup, Nikhil said, realization sharp in his tone. And when they do, Elon replied softly, we'll already know their pattern. Rhythm is everything. Control is everything. Awareness is everything. The first coordinated strike had come and failed. The next moves would test not just skill, but patience, perception, and the mastery of rhythm itself. A low, rhythmic vibration thrummed through the floorboards, subtle yet deliberate, threading into Nikhil's chest with a sense of impending pressure. Metallic taps punctuated the air, irregular now, layered with faint hissing from the vents and a soft, almost imperceptible electronic hum. They're striking back, Nikhil whispered, eyes narrowing. This isn't just a probe, they're retaliating. Always. Elon's gaze remained calm under fractured neon reflections, fingers poised over the keyboard. Expected, he said softly. Every retaliation reveals character. Intent is never hidden. It's just expressed differently. Observation and anticipation remain our advantage. From the shadows, a subtle movement, deliberate and fluid, threaded across the walls. The taps followed, forming syncopated beats, almost musical but calculated. Nikhil recognized the micro-patterns leader signals, coordination cues. They're organized, he said. Much more than before. And predictably, Elon replied, coordination without unpredictability is weakness. They've revealed hierarchy, intent, and timing. That's leverage. His fingers moved rapidly across the console, overlaying the room's ambient sound with soft, electronic pulses, counter-rhythms, threading awareness and anticipation into every vibration. A sharp hiss erupted from the ventilation, merging with metallic taps, low-frequency hum, and distant city echoes. Nikhil's chest tightened. The layered soundscape was almost suffocating, yet exhilarating. They're testing psychology now, he murmured. Pushing tension, probing patience. Exactly, Elon said, voice low, precise. Psychology is rhythm, hesitation is data. Every pause, every misstep, is leverage. Awareness becomes action. The shadow advanced, metallic taps slicing through ventilation hiss, echoing against walls. Nikhil felt the rhythm threading through his own heartbeat. "They've changed tactics," he whispered. "More subtle, more strategic, personal even." Elon's eyes glimmered. "Intent is always revealed. Their motive isn't just disruption, they want to control perception. To dominate awareness. Was we haven't say. He's once thing, was they wiso, was they ours and readers, was they wiso. He's once thing, was they once they. Was they once they, was they once they, was they once they. That's why we observe, anticipate, and thread our own rhythm through every microbeat." The metallic taps quickened, irregular now, layered with ventilation hiss and low hums vibrating beneath the floor. Nikhil's muscles tensed. Every sound, every movement, every shift of shadow carried meaning. "This is bigger than we thought," he said. "It's not just strategy, it's personal." "Yes," Elon said softly, "and personal stakes always create predictable patterns. Leverage exists wherever emotion intersects with action. The more invested they are, the easier it is to anticipate rhythm." A low, vibrating pulse surged through the floor, harmonizing with metallic taps, ventilation hiss, and hum. The shadow faltered slightly, micro-errors threading intent into Nikhil's awareness. They're revealing something about themselves, he realized. Their motive, ego, fear, ambition mixed together. Elon's fingers tapped lightly, threading counter-rhythm into the room's auditory landscape. "And we respond not with force, but with precision. Awareness, anticipation, rhythm, that is our battlefield." The shadow shifted again, now more defined, metallic taps cutting through the layered sounds, each microbeat a deliberate signal. Nikhil felt the tension knitting into every nerve, every muscle, a complex pattern of anticipation and response. "They're trying to provoke a mistake," he said. "They want us to react emotionally." "And that's predictable," Elon said calmly. "Emotion creates hesitation. Hesitation reveals intent. Awareness neutralizes advantage. And control." He tapped lightly on the desk, counter-rhythm threading tension into the room. "Creates dominance." "Thanks for watching." From the far corner, a sharp metallic clang rang out, rebounding against walls, vibrating through the floor. The antagonist leader moved with precision, signaling subordinates through rhythm and subtle cues. Nikhil felt it in the vibrations, the taps, the hum, a language of intent. "They've personal stakes in this," he said. "You can see it in the rhythm. They care more than we realized." Elon's eyes narrowed. "And that care is their vulnerability. Every micro-error, hesitation, or overreach becomes leverage. Observation is first, anticipation is second, and timing defines outcome. That's rhythm, that's control." End quote. The room pulsed with layered tension. Metallic taps, ventilation hiss, low-frequency hums, distant echoes. Every microbeat threaded perception, strategy, and anticipation into Nikhil's awareness. He realized the antagonists weren't just challenging skill, they were testing patience, emotion, and perception. "They're escalating," Nikhil whispered. "Faster, sharper, more precise." "Escalation always reveals weaknesses," Elon said softly. "And when those weaknesses are visible, leverage becomes victory." He tapped lightly, threading counter-rhythm through the environment, forcing hesitation, disrupting synchronization. The first pulse of retaliation collided with precision countermeasures. The shadow faltered, metallic taps misaligned with the room's rhythm, low hums vibrating with subtle shifts, ventilation hiss punctuating tension. Nikhil's chest loosened, slightly momentary control. Observation, anticipation had worked. Outside, fractured neon reflected across wet streets. Inside, the room throbbed with layered sound, anticipation, and strategy. The antagonists remained calculating, dangerous, but their personal stakes, ego, fear, ambition had become threads of leverage in Elon's and Nikhil's hands. "They'll regroup again," Nikhil said softly, sensing inevitability. "And when they do," Elon replied, voice calm but unwavering, "we'll already know their rhythm. Awareness is everything. Control is everything. And in the end, rhythm decides victory." The room settled into a quiet hum, the layered tension still palpable. The first wave of retaliation had been neutralized, But the deeper game had begun: personal stakes, psychological pressure, and layered strategy, threading every move yet to come. A sudden, deep vibration rolled through the floor, resonating in bone and sinew, threading tension directly into Nikhil's chest. Metallic taps ricocheted sharply against walls, irregular, layered over faint electrical hums, and the low hiss of ventilation. "They're attacking fully," Nikhil whispered, voice taut. "Everything they've held back they're throwing at us now." Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon reflections, calm but alert. "Expected," he said softly. "A full assault reveals character, intent, and personal stakes. Observation first, anticipation second. Timing defines outcome." One, one, one. From the shadows, figures moved with precise synchronization, each metallic tap, each footfall, each whispering shift of air a deliberate signal. Nikhil noticed micropatterns, leader cues, micro-delays, subtle deviations in rhythm. "They're organized," he said, realizing the scale of coordination. "Every step, every beat, it's choreographed. But they're predictable," overphytomasis. "And that predictability," Elon said softly, "is their vulnerability. Observation uncovers it. Anticipation exploits it. Rhythm dominates it." His fingers danced across the console, initiating counterpulses of soft electronic hums, ventilation shifts, and low-frequency vibrations threaded through the floor. A sudden metallic clang punctuated the room, sharp, resonant, vibrating in the walls and floor. The shadowed operatives faltered briefly, micro-errors threading intent into perception. Nikhil felt it immediately: hesitation, imbalance, the subtlest trace of emotion interfering with strategy. "They're human," he whispered. "Even in coordination, their personal stakes show through. Ego, fear, ambition. And that is leverage," Elon replied, calm but precise. "Every emotional thread creates rhythm. Every misstep in that rhythm is a window. Awareness converts it into action." The attack escalated. Metallic taps accelerated into a syncopated barrage, ventilation hiss punctuating each strike, soft hums threading tension beneath the floorboards. Nikhil's muscles coiled with anticipation, heartbeat synchronizing with the room's layered audio. "They're testing everything: speed, patience, perception," he said, voice tight. "They want us to react emotionally. And reaction is predictability," Elon said softly. "We respond not with panic, but with rhythm, precision, awareness." "I haven't, one two I know." A shadow lunged, metallic taps slicing through layered sound. A swift, controlled strike. Nikhil mirrored Elon's calm, following rhythm instead of reacting. The room itself seemed alive, vibrating with anticipation, tension, and control, every pulse threaded with strategic counterpoints. Elon's fingers tapped lightly across the keyboard, layering electronic countersignals over ambient hum, ventilation hiss, and low vibrations. The rhythm of the room became a weapon, every sound, every microbeat an instrument of dominance. "They miscalculated timing," Nikhil murmured. "They're off balance. You can see it in the micro-errors." "Exactly," Elon said, eyes gleaming. "Chaos disguised as control always exposes weakness. And weakness," he tapped lightly, threading counter-rhythm through the room, forcing hesitation and disruption, becomes leverage. From the far corner, a final metallic clang erupted, rebounding violently, vibrating through the floorboards. The antagonists faltered under the room's layered, counter-rhythmic dominance. Nikhil exhaled, feeling adrenaline, tension, and the subtle triumph threading through him. Outside, fractured neon reflected across wet streets. Inside, the room pulsed with rhythm, anticipation, and control. The antagonists, skilled, deliberate, dangerous, were still present, but their personal stakes, their ambitions, their fears, had become threads of leverage in Elon's and Nikhil's hands. "They'll regroup again," Nikhil said softly, sensing inevitability. "And when they do," Elon replied, voice calm yet unwavering, "we will already know their rhythm. Observation is power. Awareness is control. Rhythm decides victory." The first wave of the coordinated assault had been neutralized. But the deeper game, the psychological pressure, personal stakes, and layered strategy had only begun. Every move forward would push nerves, perception, and skill to the limit. And in this game, rhythm was the ultimate weapon. A distant hum vibrated through the floor, low and insistent, threading tension into every nerve. Metallic taps punctuated the room, irregular now, layered over ventilation hiss and faint electrical whines. Nikhil felt the pulse in his chest before the movement in the shadows registered. "They're trying to communicate," he whispered. "Not attack, not yet. Signals, rhythm, intent." Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon reflections, calm but precise. "Expected," he said softly. "Every reveal carries stakes. Every rhythm exposes truth. Observation first, anticipation second, and timing defines leverage. Anticipation second. Every rhythm exposes truth. Every reveal carries stakes. Every reveal carries stakes. That's way. Was it reason?" From the far corner, a shadow stepped into dim light, revealing a figure leader, deliberate, their presence threaded with calculated control. Metallic taps slowed, merging with ventilation hiss, soft electronic pulses, and a subtle floor vibration. The rhythm of the room shifted, expectant, like a held breath. "They're exposing themselves," Nikhil murmured. "You can feel it. Motives, stakes, personal." "Yes," Elon said, voice measured. "Every personal thread is a window. Ego, fear, ambition, they all leak rhythm. Every microbeat tells a story. And awareness converts story into leverage." The leader's voice cut through the layered soundscape, calm, measured, yet threaded with tension. "You've survived our tests," they said. "But this is not merely about control. It's about survival, about proving who dictates the rhythm of power." Nikhil's muscles tensed. "They're not attacking for dominance alone, they're testing, learning, sizing us up. Personal stakes, higher than we thought. Nines, that's nines prior, nines, de." Elon's gaze sharpened. Intent is always revealed, even when hidden. They've exposed what drives them. Observation threads, understanding. Anticipation converts understanding into advantage. Rhythm ensures control. Rhythm ensures control. The metallic taps shifted again, subtle but deliberate, matched with a soft vibration through the floor. The antagonists were probing, measuring, threading psychological tension into every movement, every microbeat, every pause. "They're negotiating through rhythm," Nikhil whispered. "Every sound, every tap. It's deliberate. Testing our responses. Seeing what we value, what we fear." "Exactly," Elon said. "Negotiation isn't words, it's rhythm, awareness, perception. Every hesitation is a clue. Every microreaction, a key to dominance." He tapped lightly on the desk, sending a counter-rhythm threading anticipation into the shadowed leader's movements. A ventilation hiss swelled, then receded, punctuating metallic taps. A low hum vibrated subtly through the floor. Nikhil realized the room itself had become a medium of negotiation, a living conversation of rhythm, tension, and control. "They care," Nikhil murmured, recognition dawning. "This isn't blind aggression, ego, fear, ambition. They want to prove themselves, to assert dominance on their terms. And that is leverage," Elon said softly. "Every personal stake creates predictability. Observation reveals it. Anticipation exploits it. Awareness threads control through the rhythm of the room." The leader stepped forward, eyes glinting in fractured neon light. "You understand rhythm," they said. "But do you understand motive? Survival is not merely skill, it's perception, patience, knowing when to act and when to yield." Metallic taps slowed, ventilation hiss softened, electronic hums pulsed gently. Nikhil sensed the negotiation's weight, every movement, every sound, every pause. A test of perception, a thread of psychological leverage. "They're challenging our understanding of control," Nikhil whispered. "Not through force, but through insight, patience, perception." "Yes," Elon said softly, calm but precise. "And insight becomes strategy, strategy becomes action. And when perception threads every microbeat, control is inevitable." The shadowed leader lingered, movements deliberate, rhythm intentional. Every metallic tap, ventilation hiss, and low hum was a message. A negotiation. A psychological probe. Nikhil's pulse synchronized with the room's cadence, every microbeat a key to understanding, every hesitation a thread of leverage. They'll escalate again, Nikhil murmured. Once we respond, the stakes rise. Personal, psychological, strategic. And that is expected, Elon said. Awareness is advantage, rhythm is power, observation is victory, waiting to be claimed. The room settled into a quiet pulse, layered with faint metallic taps, soft hums, and ventilation hiss. The antagonists had revealed motives, personal stakes, and psychological strategy. Yet, the deeper game had only begun, the negotiation of rhythm, perception, and control threading every move yet to come. Outside, fractured neon reflected off rain-soaked streets. Inside, the room pulsed with tension, anticipation, and understanding. Every microbeat, every sound, every pause had become part of a living dialogue, a negotiation in rhythm, a battle of perception, and a test of control. A sudden, sharp vibration surged through the floorboards, low and metallic, threading into Nikhil's chest like an urgent pulse. Metallic taps ricocheted off walls, irregular and precise, layered over ventilation, hiss, and a faint, almost imperceptible electronic hum. They've escalated, Nikhil whispered, voice tight. Everything we've seen they've concentrated into a single strike. Elon's eyes glimmered under fractured neon reflections. Calm, deliberate, expected, he said softly. A high-risk maneuver always exposes intent. Observation is first. Anticipation is second. Timing defines leverage. From the far corner, shadows shifted rapidly, the metallic taps accelerating, overlapping, forming syncopated patterns. Low-frequency vibrations hummed beneath the floor, punctuated by ventilation hiss and distant city echoes. The rhythm of the room was chaotic but calculated, threading tension into every nerve. They're coordinated, Nikhil said, realizing the complexity of the strike. Every movement, every beat, it's a single, deliberate push. But even this is predictable. And predictability is vulnerability, Elon said softly. Observation threads understanding. Anticipation converts understanding into advantage. Rhythm dominates it. His fingers moved swiftly across the console, layering counterpulses, soft hums, subtle ventilation shifts, and low vibrations threading through the floorboards. The first wave hit metallic taps, struck sharply, ventilation hiss surged, low hums pulsed. Nikhil mirrored Elon's calm, responding not with reaction, but rhythm. The room itself became a weapon, each microbeat an instrument of control. They miscalculated timing, Nikhil whispered. The strike isn't perfect. Micro-errors, subtle hesitation. Exactly, Elon said, eyes narrowing. Chaos disguised as control always exposes weakness. Every error becomes leverage. Awareness threads dominance through rhythm. He tapped lightly on the desk, sending subtle counter-rhythms that forced the attackers into micro-mistakes, disrupting synchronization. From the shadows, a leader figure lunged, metallic taps slicing through layered sound, ventilation hiss rising and falling in deliberate cadence, low-frequency hums threading tension. Nikhil's awareness expanded every sound. Every micro-movement carried strategic information. They're testing perception, patience, and control simultaneously, he murmured. Not just skill. They want us to break rhythm, to react emotionally. And reaction is predictability, Elon said calmly. Observation neutralizes aggression. Awareness converts pressure into leverage. Rhythm is our weapon. The room pulsed with layered tension. Metallic taps, ventilation hiss, low hums, distant echoes. Every microbeat threaded strategy, anticipation, and perception into Nikhil's awareness. He realized the attack wasn't just physical, it was psychological, a high-stakes negotiation of control, testing limits. They're off balance, Nikhil whispered. Even in coordination, their stakes ego, fear, ambition interfere. You can see it in every hesitation. Yes, Elon said softly. Personal stakes create rhythm. Every micro-error, every slight misstep, becomes leverage. Awareness threads control through every beat. A sudden metallic clang reverberated violently through the floor, punctuating the attack. The shadowed operatives faltered. Micro-errors, amplified by the room's counter-rhythms. Nikhil's pulse surged, adrenaline threading through muscle and nerve as he mirrored Elon's calm precision. Outside, fractured neon reflected across wet streets. Inside, the room pulsed with rhythm, tension, and control. The antagonist's high-risk maneuver had come and failed to break the mastery of perception, awareness, and anticipation threaded through Elon and Nikhil. "They'll regroup again," Nikhil said, sensing inevitability. "And when they do," Elon replied softly, voice unwavering, "we will already know their rhythm. Observation is power. Awareness is control. Rhythm decides victory." The high-stakes maneuver had tested limits, pushed nerves, and amplified tension. Yet the deeper game had only begun. Every microbeat, every layered sound, and every psychological probe remained a living dialogue, a battle of perception and control. A sharp, metallic vibration pulsed through the floor, deep and resonant, threading tension into Nikhil's chest. Ventilation hiss swelled, layered over low hums and the irregular metallic taps of the approaching shadow figures. Each sound, each microbeat, threaded anticipation through muscle and nerve. "They're making their last move," Nikhil whispered, voice taut. "Everything they've held back, they're pouring it in now." Elon's eyes glimmered in fractured neon, calm and precise. "Expected," he said softly. "A final maneuver exposes ultimate intent. Observation is first. Anticipation second. Rhythm defines dominance." The shadows advanced in coordinated surges, metallic taps slicing sharply through layered sound, ventilation hiss rising and falling, low-frequency hums, threading tension beneath the floorboards, and distant city echoes punctuating the cadence. The room's rhythm was chaotic, yet deliberate, every microbeat a test of awareness and control. "They're pushing everything: speed, precision, psychological pressure," Nikhil said. "Not just skill, they're testing patience, perception, resolve. And that is predictable," Elon said calmly. "Ego, fear, ambition, they leak rhythm. Observation threads insight. Anticipation converts insight into leverage. Awareness ensures control." A sudden metallic clang echoed violently, rebounding against walls, vibrating through the floor. The shadows faltered. Micro-errors, revealing hesitation. The subtle imprint of personal stakes on coordination. Nikhil felt it immediately: hesitation, imbalance, faint traces of fear. "They're desperate," he whispered. "Every move is high risk, personal stakes, too high." "Yes," Elon said softly, "and that desperation exposes rhythm. Every flaw, every pause, every micro-mistake becomes leverage. Awareness threads dominance through every beat. When actually those are..." From the far corner, a leader figure lunged, metallic taps slicing through the layered tension, ventilation hiss spiking, low hums vibrating beneath the floorboards. Nikhil's chest tightened as every sound, every movement, every subtle shift threaded strategic insight into perception. "They want us to break," Nikhil whispered. "Emotionally, rhythmically, and that is predictable," Elon said, voice calm, precise. "Reaction is predictability. Observation neutralizes aggression. Anticipation converts pressure into leverage. Rhythm is the weapon." The room pulsed with layered tension, metallic taps, ventilation hiss, low-frequency hums, distant echoes. Every microbeat threaded strategy, awareness, and anticipation into Nikhil's consciousness. The final maneuver was a psychological and physical onslaught, testing nerve, perception, and mastery of rhythm. "They're off balance," Nikhil whispered, sensing micro-errors amplified by their desperation. Even in coordination, their stakes, ego, fear, ambition interfere. "Yes," Elon said softly. "Every personal thread creates predictability. Awareness converts predictability into dominance. Rhythm defines control." A sharp vibration surged beneath their feet, metallic taps, soft electronic pulses, ventilation hiss, layering tension through the room. The shadowed operatives faltered, micro-errors multiplied, coordination faltered, the room's counter-rhythms threading leverage through every flaw. Nikhil mirrored Elon's calm, muscles coiled, perception sharpened. The attack collided with precise anticipation, each move countered with rhythm, awareness, and timing. The room itself became an instrument of dominance, sound and movement weaving control into every corner. Outside, fractured neon reflected across wet streets. Inside, the room throbbed with layered tension, anticipation, and strategy. The antagonist's final maneuver had been fierce, desperate, and calculated, but their personal stakes, their ambition, and their fear had been turned against them through rhythm and perception. "They'll regroup no more," Nikhil said softly, pulse slowly normalizing. Elon's eyes glimmered, calm, unwavering. "And if they do, the rhythm is ours. Observation is power, awareness is control. Timing defines victory." The final assault had been survived, the ultimate test of skill, perception, and psychological endurance passed. But the deeper lesson remained. In a world of chaos, desperation, and ambition, rhythm, awareness, and anticipation were the ultimate weapons, and control was claimed not through force, but through mastery of perception and timing. A thin sliver of dawn light cut across the wet floors, refracting in fractured neon. The room, once vibrating with tension, now breathed a quiet hum, like the aftertaste of a storm. Nikhil ran his fingers over the edge of the console, tracing the rhythm of residual vibrations that lingered in the air. "We held them off," he whispered, almost to himself, sensing the subtle shift in the room. Metallic taps, soft ventilation hiss, and low hums had faded, leaving only the soft thrum of anticipation. But they're not gone. Not completely. Elon's eyes scanned the monitors, calm and deliberate, reflections of neon catching the sharp planes of his face. "Expected," he said softly. "Every engagement leaves residue. Every opponent has threads that linger. Awareness now is consolidation, threading every microbeat of advantage into a durable position." The shadows outside the room moved cautiously, distant but perceptible, their rhythm now broken, their coordinated strikes neutralized. The antagonists had retreated, but their personal stakes, their fear, ambition, ego remained a palpable tension in the environment. "They underestimated us," Nikhil murmured, feeling the hum of the room settle. Every desperation, every high-risk maneuver, it became a map of their intentions. "Their flaws are clear now." "And clarity," Elon said, voice low, precise, "is leverage. Observation becomes strategy, strategy becomes action, and awareness defines control." A faint metallic ping echoed from the far corner, almost playful in its subtlety, a remnant of the antagonist's presence. Nikhil turned, noticing how even the smallest object, displaced during the last assault, now carried significance, a tool, a warning, a signal. "They left traces," he said, voice tight. "Every microbeat, every sound they left something behind, not just for tracking, but as a test." Elon's fingers moved over the console, layering a counter-rhythm over the room's natural hum, threading subtle vibrations through the floor, ventilation, and electronics. "Every test is data," he said softly. "Every pattern, every hesitation, record it, analyze it, and prepare. Control isn't merely survival, it's anticipation of the next wave." Uncertain. Outside, neon reflected on wet streets, fractured and flickering like fractured memory. Inside, the room pulsed quietly with life, residual rhythm holding the lessons of the previous confrontation. Nikhil felt it in every fiber, every sound, every vibration, every shadow, now a marker, a possibility, a potential advantage. "They'll return," he said quietly, almost to himself, "stronger, more prepared. But now, we're ready for them." "Yes," Elon replied, calm but with an edge of finality. "Preparedness is perception. Perception is rhythm. And rhythm defines victory." A subtle vibration threaded through the room again, almost imperceptible. But Nikhil felt it, recognized it. A reminder. The game wasn't over. Not yet. But for now, the storm had passed, and the landscape of advantage had shifted. Outside, the city stirred, indifferent to the battles waged within a single room, where strategy, perception, and rhythm had collided in silence, leaving echoes that would guide every next move. Nikhil exhaled, letting the quiet sink in. The antagonists were out there planning, calculating, but for the first time, he felt the balance of control in their favor, their rhythm mapped and understood. Elon looked up, eyes meeting his. This is the calm before everything else. And we decide how the next rhythm moves. As active, the neon reflected, shadows softened, and for a moment, the room held its breath silent, aware, waiting.